It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and we're celebrating the Bajoran Gratitude Festival, which is pretty bold given how that turned out a few years back. This one's gone off without much of a hitch, though Kira's not impressed with Odo arresting a Vedek. There's a more private celebration as well, with Admiral Ross pinning some metal on Sisko. This is a Starfleet admiral we're dealing with though, so it obviously comes with a catch. They want Sisko to lead the invasion of Cardigan space. A little planning later, and Sisko's decided there's a poorly defended system that'd make a good start. In fact, he thinks the hardest part will be getting Starfleet, Klingons and Romulans to work together in taking it. He might be wrong about that. Fifth Uncle Wayoon the Creepy is worried about Sisko's target being open to attack, but Damar Dawson Biggs says there's no reason for concern. That system's about to receive a whole shitload of automated defense platforms, so the lack of a significant fleet is irrelevant. Talk of domestic issues is pushed aside by the unexpected arrival of Seagull Dukat. Fifth Uncle Wayoon's not impressed to see him, and Damar Dawson Biggs is a little upset too, what with murdering his daughter and all. Not to worry though, as Seagull Dukat's choosing to blame that on Sisko, which is a little unfair when Sisko hadn't even been on the station for months when it happened. In fact, that's why Seagull Dukat's here, for vengeance upon Sisko. He also says it'll give the Dominion access to the wormhole again for some reinforcements, so as his plan only needs one of the many trinkets the Cardigans nicked from Bajor back in the day, there's really no reason not to let him have a go. Anything to distract Sisko might be useful to the Dominion at this point. He's currently trying to convince the Romulans that invading Cardigan space to destroy their production facilities is the only way to solve the problem of the Dominion making soldiers faster than we can murderize them, and it's a meeting not helped by Martok, husband of Sorella, being a proper dick. The meeting must have worked, as Jake's telling his dad he intends to go with them. He's a reporter after all, and this is definitely news. Sisko's dead set against him being on the Defiant until Jake says he'll go on a Klingon ship instead, which doesn't give him a lot of choice. The prophets seem to have other ideas as we slip into an orb vision. The Sisko is of Bajor, they say, and being elsewhere is distinctly dangerous. Sisko asks what that means and for whom, but that's all he's getting, and they bugger off again. Somebody on our side found out about those automatic defense platforms as Admiral Ross is relaying the data. There are hundreds of the little buggers, but there's no reason to worry because just like the Death Star 2, we've heard they're not online yet. That'll change in a few days according to Ross, so we all agree to trot off first thing tomorrow for a bit of the old kabooming. When the others have gone, Ross notes Sisko's been quiet. Being told about how the prophets think this whole thing is a bad idea forces Ross to address something that's been chugging along in the background for years. Sisko is either the emissary of the prophets or he's a Starfleet officer, and he needs to decide which. Faced with losing access to the executive bathrooms at Starfleet headquarters, Sisko agrees to go ahead with the attack. Espionage works both ways, it seems, as Fifth Uncle Wayoon the Creepy has learned of the imminent attack. Just as well that those weapons platforms will be ready in time, says Damar Dawson Biggs, before being once again interrupted by Seagull Dukat. He's found the Bajoran artifact he was looking for, and based on his research of the wormhole and learning it's where the prophets live, he thinks he now has a way of fighting them. All it needs is his body. Back on DS9, Kira's called by Odo's office. She's going with Sisko in the attack force, so I guess that non-aggression treaty is officially null and void after the terrorism and all. She's here to find out why he's been avoiding her, and the answer is because it's what he thought she wanted. He also assumed she didn't want to be in a relationship with him anymore, what with him arresting a Vedek, so is relieved when she tells him occasionally disagreeing is part of being with someone. They arrange to spend the evening together before she leaves. The morning comes and we're all getting ready to bugger off, save for Dax, who's presumably being left in charge, and Bashir for some reason. Plain simple Garak is going with them though, so maybe Bashir staying behind was to avoid the raw sexual tension between them. Once we're all ready to go, Martok, husband of Sorella, gives the order to leave. The defence platforms are still offline as the fleet approaches, much to the concern of 5th Uncle Wayoon the Creepy. Damar Dawson-Biggs doesn't think it's squeaky bum time just yet though, and the battle is joined. Well, I say battle, it's mainly the few Jem'Hadar ships guarding the place doing as much damage as they can by ramming into the ships closest to them. A delaying tactic, thinks Worf, though an unnecessary one as the platforms come online when we start kabooming them. Pooping abounds, and not exactly in our favour as we can't get through their shields. It's plain simple Garak who notices none of these weapons platforms have their own power supply, so O'Brien starts to look for where they're getting their juice so we can kaboom that instead. Back on DS9, Bashir's telling Dax things are looking good for the prospect of she and Worf having a child together, this being something they were discussing earlier. A Klingon-Trill coupling was expected to be biologically difficult according to Bashir, and Kira put in a good word with the prophets when she was in the temple last, so Dax decides to go herself and thank them personally. She's stumbling her way through a sort of prayer when Seagull Dukat teleports in, accompanied by a wind to blow out all the candles like what proper occult shit does. Dax is quick to recover and try to draw her weapon, but not as quick as Seagull Dukat is at farting some Par-Wraith energy at her. She's lifted and falls to the floor before he approaches the orb in the shrine, the Par-Wraith having a go at that now too. It turns black as Seagull Dukat's eyes lose their coloured contact lenses, the Par-Wraith having buggered off elsewhere. The elsewhere is perhaps the wormhole, as there's something distinctly screwy going on with it. Opening unexpectedly, then closing with a significant kaboom is not normal behaviour, and it makes Sisko feel a great disturbance in the Force. We've not got time to worry about him hearing voices cry out in terror and being suddenly silenced, as O'Brien's found the power source for those weapons platforms. When it becomes clear Sisko's no longer capable of commanding, Kira takes over while Jake escorts his dad off the bridge. That just leaves us with the problem of kabooming a very well-defended installation while powerful orbital weapons kick the living shit out of us. O'Brien has the idea of letting them do the job for us, and we do a science to make them think there's a Starfleet ship down there instead. They lock on to the Phantom signal and kaboom their own power source, leaving the rest of the fleet to mop up the now inactive weapons on their way to the planet. The celebration at their success lasts right up until they receive an emergency call from Bashir. 5th Uncle Wayoon the Creepy is, understandably, a bit pissed off about things. Not only did they lose the fight, but Seagull Dukat's little plan to open the way for reinforcements looks like it's permanently closed the wormhole, which is hardly ideal. Seagull Dukat's fucked over Sisko, though, and that's all that matters to him. The Defiant returns home to a lot of upset Bajorans looking to the emissary to fix things. Oh, and Dax is dying. Well, technically, Dax is fine as the belly worm has been retrieved for sending back to Trill, but Jadzier's all kinds of bollocksed up and carks it while Worf is with her. Sisko didn't get a chance for a chat before it happened, so he's talking to the coffin instead. He's buggered everything up by ignoring the prophets, he thinks, and has decided he needs a break from everything to figure out what comes next. He hands the job over to Kira before he leaves, and he's taken his baseball with him too. Working in his dad's restaurant is a pleasant change of pace, so we'll leave him to lose himself in busy work until the next adventure. It's a hard life for Sisko. The job of being a Starfleet officer is time-consuming and stressful enough, but he also has to juggle the responsibilities of being the political officer for some gods as well. We've seen before what happens when those two roles come into conflict. A Starfleet admiral was very clear with how pissed off he was when Sisko stopped Bajor from joining the Federation. It was only the potential political repercussions that stopped him from bollocksing up Sisko's career as a result. Of course, that action by Sisko was proven to be entirely on the money when the Dominion rolled up and set up shop in Bajoran space. We don't know if Sisko ever got an apology from the Admiral in question, but based on the actions of your average Starfleet brass, I think we can assume the answer is probably no. Given how Sisko's decision turned out back then, you'd expect Starfleet Command to have a little more time for such events in the future. An institution based on science, not lending much credence to a native religion, is one thing, but once that religion has proven it really is in contact with extratemporal beings who speak to them, then ignoring it is hardly the smartest choice. Not that Admiral Ross is likely to feel the same way given the outcome. From his perspective, the only thing we've lost is a door that opened onto an existential threat, one lieutenant commander whose service history includes going off to do a murder and the superstitious woo of a non-member species. Okay, Sisko's on sabbatical now, but he's the guy who thought he was talking to gods in his spare time, so who gives a shit? Hell, that might even be a bonus, as with DS9 now under the command of Kira, Starfleet's no longer on the hook for anything that goes wrong there. As far as Ross is concerned, this is probably a superb result, and from a purely analytical point of view, it's hard to disagree with that conclusion. The closing of the wormhole, coupled with the capture of some Cardigan territory, means the Dominion's incursion into the Alpha Quadrant has never been weaker. What amounts to a significant success for the Federation and its allies is bloody awful for most of the people we know, though. Bajor's now largely rudderless as a result of the Prophets buggering off, Dax got murderized in the process, and Sisko's having what I guess could best be described as a crisis of faith. In a way, that's fitting. Small groups suffering so the majority can have an easier life is a topic DS9's been covering since at least the Marquee, and arguably earlier. The series is nothing if not consistent on showing the personal cost to those involved. And speaking of cost, one of our motley crew paid the highest price for her service. Dax is no more, at least in Jadzia form. I wonder how the murderer part of the Gestalt feels about now being a murder victim as well. We'll talk about the behind-the-scenes stuff more in the Season 6 summary, so for now, let's focus on the impact of losing the character on those around her. Worf's the obvious one. They didn't even make it to their planned honeymoon, let alone the first wedding anniversary. On the plus side, at least he'll probably get to keep the bigger quarters. Quark and Bashir both lose a friend and someone they fancied. That latter point works to a degree for Quark, purely because he's built to want things he doesn't have, but I personally think it was an unnecessary complication for Bashir, and one that undoes a fair portion of his character growth. Part of him becoming more likeable was the move away from chasing Dax, so having him say, "Oh, actually I did proper fancy her, and I still do," is a mixed message. O'Brien, Kira and Odo have lost a friend and a colleague, though they're probably the least affected. They all have their bonds, like Dax offering an ear for Kira during the Odo business, but it's not what you'd call close. Her relationship with Jake was along the same lines. It's Sisko, then, who's most affected. He's now lost Dax twice in different forms, and feels this last one was largely due to his actions. That's an unfair judgment of himself, of course, as the action in question was forced by Admiral Ross, but we rarely beat ourselves up over logical things, now do we? The end result is him becoming disillusioned by the whole thing and needing space to find perspective once more, towards which one of those twin lives he'll try and aim that perspective is left unsaid. We've just a few minor details to have a look at then before we're done for today. The first is the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor. I like the little nod towards the 3 colours of Starfleet divisions in the ribbon, but I'm not sure about the medal itself carrying the face of a guy who's most famous for having his face melted off. It feels a bit like having a Geordie LaForge Medal for Engineering that prominently features a pair of eyes. The second detail is Odo locking up a Vedek. Odo's choice to arrest him might feel like it goes against his nature of ignoring rules when it's pragmatic to do so. Kira certainly seemed very pissed off about it. But I'd remind you these rules aren't ones Odo created. We're on a Bajoran station under Bajoran rules. Odo applying those rules to the very people who made them reframes his actions as deferring to their choice rather than making one himself. If that action also happens to carry a lesson about unintended consequences when he's not given a little discretion, then all the better. Lastly, there's a nice touch near the end with Seagull Dukat on the phone. He's standing in front of a Starfleet background, meaning he's likely still in the mega shuttle he nicked in Waltz earlier this season. There's a fair chance he had the opportunity to upgrade to something a bit meatier when he was on Cardassia, but I think keeping it is far more appropriate for the character. He considers himself a man with a destiny now more than ever, and flying around in the ship he took from Sisko is a constant reminder of the time he won against his nemesis. To him, that would be worth more than any amount of armor or weapons. End of episode.
I can't wait to be on the road with you guys. I've been alone so long that I'm fit to bursting with social energy. Nothing but non-stop talks about how memes used to be great and today's young'uns are wrong about everything. And I brought all of my photo albums of animated GIFs so we can look through them all whenever we're resting. Best of all, we'll be able to show off my dancing skills to every single place we stop. The whole internet's going to associate the two of you with the famous diaper guy. Isn't that great? I'm going to love spending every single second with the both of you. We'll be completely inseparable. Do you think we did the right thing by...
Yes, we did.
Yeah, it's probably for best, isn't it? Woof.